Okay, so we're going to continue our discussion about absolute values. So let's recall what we learned yesterday. So yesterday, who can read this sentence to me based on what this number line says? Anybody brave? Cassandra. Good job. The distance between x and 0 is 5. So yesterday we talked about if we're 5 units in this direction and 5 units in this direction, then we would write that the absolute value of the distance between, that's why we have the subtraction sign, x and 0 is 5. But normally you would just see it written, the absolute value of x is 5. So that being said, let's look at how we would take care of this algebraically and solve for this absolute value equation. So I have the absolute value of x is 5. That means two things. It means that we can measure the distance going in the positive direction, which would be 5 units, and we can measure it in the negative direction, which is negative 5. And that's exactly what we have here, right? 5 and negative 5. Questions on that? Now let's look at it when we have something more that we're trying to solve for. So let's read this one. Who wants to read this one? The distance between, Juan, you want to read it? Good. The distance between x and 1 is 4. Why didn't we put negative 1 in there? Okay, not just because it's absolute value, but what does this mean right here? It doesn't mean minus. It means the difference. And doesn't difference mean distance between two things? So it's not really x minus 1. It's saying I want to know how much is in between x and 1, right? Okay, so that being said, we can look at this as x minus 1 could be negative 4, meaning, where would I start on the number line here with this equation? At 1. And if I'm going 1, 2, 3, 4 in the positive direction, that's x minus the difference between x and 1 in the positive direction, and the difference between 2, 3, 4, x and 1 in the negative direction. So we have to account for both. Just like we talked about the beach, going to the beach, if you drive to the beach, you also have to drive back home, right? So we have to consider both directions when we're doing absolute value. So let's solve for this. How would I solve for this equation here? I can't solve for this? Oh, I see what you're saying. Are you saying that you can't have a negative with absolute value? But it's not. I took this out and said the distance between x and 1 in the negative direction, right? Let's just keep going, Elgin, and you'll see exactly how this is going to work, okay? How do I solve for this? Add 1 to both sides. If I add 1 to both sides, I get x equals how much? Negative 3. And if I add 1 to both sides over here, I get x equals 5. This says 5. This says negative 3. The distance between x and 1 is 5 if you're going in the positive direction, and negative 3 if you're going in the negative direction. Make sense? Okay. Let's write down these two examples. So let's look at example 1. So can I say that we're trying to find the distance between D and 5? Not really. Am I really? Does this mean distance?
No.
Does adding something mean distance?
No.
No. So actually, I'm trying to find the distance between D and -5. True? Let's move out of the way really quick. Uh-oh. Giving myself some room. All right, so let's do this algebraically first. Old school. All right, so we want, let me put an arrow this way and this way. So I'm trying to find the distance between -5 and D in the negative direction, and the distance between D and -5 in the positive direction. The opposite of a negative is positive. So in order to solve for D, I need to take 5 off of each side. So D equals -6. Take 5 off of each side over here, and I get D equals a -5 and a +1, -4. Let's look and see what that looks like on a number line. The distance between D and -5, so where am I going to start? -5, right? And I'm going to go out how much? 1, right? The distance between them was 1, that's what this says. And so I get -4 and -6. Did I get -6 and -4? I did. What about this one? Let's solve for this one first, and then let's talk about it on a number line. Okay. You guys ready to make your brains hurt a little bit? Yes, Mrs. Muller, we are. So what does this say? Anybody brave enough to say it? The distance between what? The distance between 2f and 9, right? So I'm going to write that. The distance between 2f and 9 is in the negative direction is -1, and the distance between 2f and 9 in the positive direction. How do I solve for this one? Two-step equation, guys. How do I solve for this? Add 9 to both sides. When I add 9 to both sides, I get 2f's are equal to 8. And if 2f's are equal to 8, then 1f is equal to 4. Add 8 to both sides on this side. 2f, I'm sorry, 9, thank you. So 2f is equal to 10, therefore 1f is equal to 5. Let's graph that. Here's 4, here's 5. But this says the distance between 2f and 9. Normally we would start at 9, right? But we didn't start at 9. Where would I start? Let's work backwards on this problem. Where would I start if I was talking about the distance between a number and this side and a number on this side? Where's the middle of that? 4.5. Good. Right? Isn't that the middle of it? Well, if the distance between 2f's is 9, then what would be the distance between 1f? What would be the distance if, let's change the number and see if you guys can figure it out more. If the distance between 2f's was 8, then what would be the distance between 1f? 4. Good. It's 4.5, right? The distance between 2f and 9 is 4.5. Am I starting at 4.5? Measure the distance from 4.5 to 5. How much is the distance from 4.5 to 5? 0.5, but this says 1. Anybody see the connection? If 2s, the distance between 2s and 9 is 1, isn't the distance between s and 4.5 half of that? See how that works? I'm not expecting you to be able to do that. This type of problem needs to be done algebraically, right? I'm just wanting you to stretch your knowledge base a little bit. You see how can you follow my reasoning on what I just did? Sort of. So if I'm talking about twice the distance, all I have to do is cut it in half. If I'm talking about the distance of 2s, if I cut that in half, isn't that talking about the distance of 1s? And if I'm talking about if 2 distances is 9, isn't half of that 4.5? And if I'm totaling finding that distance, and originally for 2 of them it was 1, isn't half of that 0.5? And isn't that what we have? Just want to make you think. Let's do this matching. Somebody come up and do this matching for me. Just by looking at each one of these absolute value equations, tell me which one of them matches one on the right. Come on, quickly. Come do it. Thank you, Alex. Awesome. Taking the initiative. Good job. Somebody else? Nobody's as brave as Alex? Oh, come on, Andrew. You know you want to stand up. Come on. I didn't ask you if you felt like it. Thank you. Come on. Get the next one, Elgin. Get the next one. Good. Good. Hurry, hurry. You did that fast.
You had to count.
You had to count. How did you do that, Elgin? Oh, you counted from here to here as 8?
Yeah.
Oh, that's true, right? Or you could say that if we're talking about 2 distances of x, then what's 1 distance of x? Right? And not 2, but -2. So half of that would be 4. So if I start at -2, I would go 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Good. That's exactly what I'm asking you to do, is visualize that. You know, most teachers can't visualize that. They just know procedure. They've been used to teaching the steps. Okay. And the last one is obviously this one right here. All right, I have to show you one more thing. This one's Showdown, but I doubt when you see it, you guys are going to want to do it. You guys want to do it? Actually, we're running out of time. Let me show you. So let's look at this one. If 3x's, if the distance between, first of all, let's change it. Please don't pack up. They're going to hurt my feelings. All right, so if the distance between 3x's is -1/2, how could I find the distance of just 1x? Well, think about that.
Would it be the before that?
Good, let's talk about that. First of all, let's split them up. So we're talking about 3x plus 1/2 in the negative direction, and 3x plus 1/2 in the positive direction, right? How could I get rid of the fraction?
2 over 1 on both sides.
Multiply everything by 2 and you'll get rid of the fraction, and then you just solve it the same way. Have a great day, guys. I'll finish it and post it. And we'll use this over here. So if x is negative 13.6, that's a little over 2. That would be here. Actually there. And if this is 11.6, 11.6 is a little less than 2. So that's my solution there.